I want their leader brought here. I want him brought to me. I want the revolution crushed.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Mad Mamluks. My name is Sim. Along with me is my trusty co-host, one and only Indonesia's wild man. Where are you? Oh, wrong buttons. A bit out of practice right now.
I'm right here. Assalamu alaikum, my crackers. How you doing?
Good to see one and only again. Harry Aleph. Harry, what's going on, man?
Thank you.
How goes it?
Well, thank you. Once again, totally shameless plug. Please follow me on X at Mr. Harry198. Also, please subscribe to this channel right here because we have been shadow banned by the powers that be. So we need all the help we can get, guys. It's much appreciated.
The Matrix?
The Matrix is coming after us.
The deep state. Whatever. What was the thing that when we were young that they called it? Did they call it the deep state when we were young?
You know, when I was a kid, my dad had some of the David Icke's books. Books.
He thought about David Icke. What's that? I thought it was Ike. David Icke. David Icke. He was the guy. He had this idea about lizard people. That all of our politicians were actually lizards. Now he's gone. He's kind of backtracked from that idea. And now if you bring it up to him, he'll like get in your face and he'll get really upset about it. But it was something that he brought up, that the world's powers that be, the deep state, they were actually an alien race of lizards that are camouflaged with human skin.
Yeah, this was right around the time that The Matrix was a popular movie, so he said he had a couple books out where he made reference to The Matrix right in the title.
Yeah.
He interestingly enough also had some ayahuasca experiences. Now, I don't think he's saying that our politicians are lizard people, but what he's saying is that there is an interdimensional race of lizard reptilianoid aliens that are actually interfacing with people at top levels.
Yeah.
And so I grew up on stuff like this, and I had a fascination with this kind of paranormal, political kind of stuff,
Yeah.
And for me, once I found Islam, I started reading stuff like Surah Al-Jinn. I was like,
Well, what about in Surah Al-Jinn that made you? There's something that is really specific about alien people. We know that the jinn exists, right? But
to me, it's the jinn. To me, what David Icke is actually talking about through his ayahuasca experiences is actually the jinn.
Without a doubt. I mean,
yeah.
There's that one that I don't know how to say it specifically, but there's a dimension that exists outside of our own, and there's some kind of interaction that's happening where people are seeing interdimensional beings through ayahuasca or dreams or any kind of other spiritual state where your soul or some perception of yours is not in alignment perfectly with this dimension. And I think that allows people to see things in the dark. They see Bigfoot. Those are, I believe, all those things are happening to some extent. Not every single case, obviously, because I'm sure there's a lot of fake sightings and stuff like that. But taking people's word for it that they're being honest and that this is exactly what they're saying that they're seeing without the impairments of alcohol or any other things. But I think that there's some kind of overlap or some kind of misconfiguration that's happening that's allowing some kind of interaction to take place where people see weird things. And I think that's what happens in ayahuasca or dreams, because when you dream, your soul leaves your body just a little bit, like
just a little bit,
yeah,
just like ayahuasca.
So I think that allows your body or your soul to interact with that other dimension. That's why I think you have those sleep terror, or what's it called, sleep paralysis.
Night terrors.
Yeah.
Oh, I had those a lot as a kid.
Yeah.
Rob, I'm terribly sorry, but speaking of terrors, you're online already. We're live.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So don't start singing a song or take your clothes off or anything like that.
Well, thank you for the warning. Thanks for the warning. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. How's everybody doing?
Well, alaikum salam. Rob is joining us today here at the Mad Mamluks. He's a super awesome dude. And Rob, you used to be a former white nationalist, white supremacist.
I wouldn't say it was officially one. I was aware of their writings around the same time that I converted, that I was introduced to Islam, or Allah like showed me the teachings of Islam. So I was kind of reviewing those writings simultaneously. So I was aware of the writings of Michael Collins Piper and David Icke, David Duke and whatnot. So like I wasn't part of any gang. I wasn't what you call a white supremacist, but I was aware of the writings, and there were people around my spheres who were actual white nationalists.
Rob, is it true that the tip of Idaho has a whole lot of white supremacists, like card-carrying Nazis? Like, it's a danger zone for anyone of any other ethnicity or color to go there. The tip of Idaho.
I wouldn't say that it's the danger zone, but I would say that the bulk of white nationalists. I mean, they're in every state, but you more likely find them in Idaho, Montana. Montana is, ironically, the where Richard Spencer currently resides. So that area right there is you'll see a lot of WN folks around that region. So
it's scary stuff because now that a lot of the rhetoric or a lot of the discussion online has prompted, at least with more recently the events that transpired in the UK with all the riots and everything. The question about Muslims moving back home, making Hijrah, has been reignited. It's been one of those things that comes and goes over the past 20, 30 years. I've been hearing it since I was a kid. Khatibs have been discussing it back and forth. Hey, is this a viable place for Muslim families to be raised in? I think it involves a very much more nuanced discussion than the simplistic way that many people tend to discuss it with. So let's start things off. Robert, do you think Muslims should go back home?
Well, it depends on the situation. It depends on the person. It depends on the family. It depends on what country you're in. All those factors have to be taken into account. Relocating to a country where your kids have never been to, that in and of itself is a huge decision. Having said that, there are, this discussion, becomes even more nuanced when we talk about what continent you're talking about. So, let's just talk about Europe proper. There's a lot, as as you probably read in the news, the AfD, the far right group in Germany, just won a massive election. It wasn't for the country, but it was for a state in Germany, and they have followed suit with Italy, Sweden. I'm trying to think of the other countries that have gone right recently in elections. The main issue for the populist peoples in Europe is immigration. Now, we have to remember, and I've been saying this several times on my channel, Islam for Europeans, and as a caveat, I am not an advocate of allying with either of these factions, but it's important to understand as Muslims that what we call the right, or the European right, is divided into two basic ideological factions, and Harry will he'll agree with me on this. You have the anti-Islam right. So this would be any mainstream politician or political group, whether that is AfD or Reform in UK, or Zemmour in France, or Golden Dawn in Greece. And their basic position is that the main problem with immigration is Islam itself. Islam is the problem. It's not the fact that, you have people coming from all places around the world, coming with a different culture, a different set of values. It's the fact that, the majority of the people coming here are Muslim. And if they are to convert out of Islam, this would be perfectly fine. And they tend to be more pro-liberalism. And, this is analogous to the vast majority of people that end up being the people you see on the other side of debates with people like Daniel Hakikaju and Ali Dawa, Muhammad Hijab, your Tommy Robinsons, your Douglas Murrays, your in Canada, Gavin McInnes, Ezra Levant. Any one of these, is we consider the anti-Islam right? Now, there's another faction of the right called generally you can call them the dissident right. So their main issue is not Islam, but liberalism or just mass immigration in general. The fact that they're Muslim or not matters little. It's the fact that mass immigration has contributed to loss of social cohesion, a vast increase in housing prices. They tend to be very anti-war. This faction against the neoconservative wars of the 2000s, this is the Bush era. They are against Zionism. So in that respect, they are the complete antithesis of the anti-Islam right. So it's important to understand these two factions not because the dissident right does not have any political power. It's important to know that. But in terms of popular support, we don't know exactly, because we've never polled, people on this. Muslims, they don't tend to poll people or, do any type of research to figure out what popular opinion is. But you could say, I guess, in the social media world, at least a 50-50 split. And, Muslims, I guess, in the mainstream, if we keep having the position that, any and all immigration at all times, Muslim immigration at all times is a good thing, full stop. It paints the picture that Muslims are lock, stock, and barrel in line with almost not just Hijrah, but the opposite of Hijrah. Muslims coming to the West. I am a much more nuanced position than that. I think that if Muslims have the resources and they want to maintain their religion and their kids' religion, Hijrah is a very good idea in Europe at this point. To places that are relatively economically stable, Turkey, Malaysia, the Middle East. I think that it's a good idea in general for several reasons. You're protecting the religion of your kids, of yourself. And as we see, with the anti-Islam right becoming more and more prominent, they're going to really clamp down on any type of anti-Zionist speech or pro-Islam speech, to stifle any type of dissent when it comes to political decisions. So, for those particular reasons, then we need to look into the future here, moving to a Muslim country. For many, and then get into another discussion about born Muslims, but I'm just talking about born Muslims in general as opposed to converts. And I'm not a sheikh, I'm not a scholar, but many scholars say that if you are going to a non-Muslim country, you should be contributing by giving dawah in some particular way. And yes. Honestly, we need to ask Muslims, living in Europe, need to ask themselves, am I contributing positively to the growth and the image of Islam in Europe? Not to appease any political faction, but to seriously think, am I disobeying Allah? Am I pleasing Allah by being here in this non-Muslim country where I'm staying in my own ethnic enclave, where I don't interact with the general public, they really need to ask themselves the hard questions. So in summation, yes, it depends on the person, it depends on the family. Making Hijrah anywhere or moving to any country and changing your life around is never an easy thing to do. It's not an easy thing. You're getting up, packing ship, you're going into a place where you don't know many people unless you have family, and it's an enormous change. But I think for many born Muslims currently living in Europe, I think it's a good decision, depending on the country. But Italy, France, Germany, Even the UK to an extent, Sweden. It's probably a very intelligent decision to make at this point. So
well, the entire
that's my answer.
Rob, actually, here let's roll this back a little bit, because the entire premise of this discussion seems like it's being pushed by the far right, advancing or pushing this idea like, hey, this is in your religion, making hijrah. And I don't think that in itself would be a way to make Muslims want to go back, like, because Muslims don't want to be bullied into leaving. If they do leave, they're going to make that decision independently as a family. They're going to see like, hey, is this a place where my family is going to be able to practice their religion freely without duress or any kind of threats? Harry, how do you feel about the premise to this discussion? Because I feel like a lot of this discussion is coming back because of the threat of the far right.
Well, my position has always been this, that if Muslims, the Muslims have already contributed positively in several ways in Europe recently. And one of that is, the protests against, certain school agendas, especially in the UK. So that's a bargaining chip. That's a playing card to show that, look, Islam has a lot to offer, the society. But I think, the approach that, we wanted to take is, if you, on top of that, just simply offer this kind of sub-community approach. If the Muslims, offer a sub-community approach to the people who converted to Islam in those European countries, which should be very easy to set up. This would be another positive thing that Islam could offer to these countries, because they're, the argument is that Islam is that our cultures are dying out, our total fertility rate is dying out, and this would completely flip the script on the image of Islam in the West. And if you use that approach, what you do as a Muslim community is say, look, like, what we want is very simple. It's very easy. We want the safety and security of Muslims currently living in Europe and the West. Like these are the positive things that we're offering to society. We want, if we want to make hijrah, that should be a voluntary option. So I'm against any involuntary repatriation of law-abiding Muslims living in the West. And I think that's exactly what you're talking about, Sim. Is that the idea that you're being forced or bullied into moving into a Muslim country, you're being quote unquote kicked out. We should be completely against that. It's inhumane, to force someone to move into another country. But having said that, if you simply make it a voluntary option, I think many Muslims in Europe, would want to go back, to their countries of origin. And one major piece that we're forgetting here is that the reason why many of them have moved to Europe is because their countries have been decimated. I mean, there's a lot of political instability. Western governments have been known for supporting puppet dictators in those regions. I mean, these are very complicated.
Rob, just to pause you there. There's one thing that you added, that many Muslims would be willing to go back. I think there's some truth in that with the first couple generations, but people who've lived here, third, fourth generation, they're not going to move back. And I'm just a second generation Muslim here, and there's no way I wouldn't move back to India. That's where my parents are from. But India is going through a far right nationalist thing themselves, and there's no way in hell. And let's just look at it just by the demographics. Indians and Pakistanis are probably the largest makeup of Muslims in Western countries, or right up there, right? If you're thinking that we would want to move back over there, this is not going to happen. Forget about just the dissimilarity of upbringing. Even the language is different for us. People who have grown up in these countries, there's just you don't find this inclination among Muslims who are of the Indian Pakistani background to move back to India or Pakistan. They may want to move back to maybe Indonesia or Malaysia, or move to Turkey or Morocco. These countries where they're more accepting or open to permanent resident immigration type of a thing, but they're not going to go back to their origin country. That's for sure. Especially because it's just a mess over there. You go over there, they still haven't figured out public sanitation, public sewage systems aren't still working right. They don't have transportation systems that function properly. They're a hot mess in India and Pakistan. And the reason why there's so much of a brain drain from the subcontinent itself, and the West has primarily benefited from that brain drain, is because those countries there's a cultural problem in how they address problems in their society. They were able to create a nuclear bomb, but they can't figure out a highway transportation system. Like their thinking is like scattered. It doesn't have any kind of their society is filled with corruption. It doesn't prioritize their people's needs correctly. There's a whole lot of other interests that are in play that are that's everything other than the advancement of their people, and that's why many people would never ever go back.
Yeah, no, I agree, Sim. I mean, the further generation you get who've been in the West in general, the far less likely they'll want to move, and the far less likely they'll be able, to. I mean, I don't know any type of person who's thought of any roadmap for people, Muslims going from the West to places like India, to fix the political problems there. That is, I don't think there's any think tank have ever proposed how they can improve the society.
Rob, there. I'm so convinced that if you said, "Here's $10 million," and you go to Pakistan and you live there, I guarantee I would not take it. I promise you. No amount of money.
I would totally.
You know what? You haven't lived. You haven't been there. You probably get robbed by the time you go to collect that money in Karachi. There'll be a couple guys who pull up on some scooters, on some motorcycles with some semi-automatic weapons, and they'll just take your money before you even walk away from the ATM. It's so crazy.
My first choice for that.
No, but I'm saying like that's where a lot of the immigrants are from, right? And in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, you're not going to have those people go back. It's just not going to happen. You might have a few people, like here and there, might find their families like falling apart, leaving the religion. They're like, hey, this is the only option. We have to go back. My family's just losing their religion. Other than those few exceptions, most people from the subcontinent are not going to go back. There would have to be new inroads to other or immigration options within Turkey, where Turkey is now offering people to get permanent residency or immigration status to reside there, or even a pathway to citizenship. As I understand, if you buy a certain amount of property, I think it's like $200,000 or something like that. So other than those avenues, I don't see people wanting to move back. But then there's great countries like Malaysia as well too. So maybe you can talk about that, Harry.
Let me jump in here for a second. Let me take over because it's kind of my AO. So I mean, all jokes aside about Pakistan being crazy and dangerous, which I know it is. I have friends in Pakistan. They've invited me over. I've seen some YouTube travel videos of good things about Pakistan and bad things about Pakistan. Now, if you gave me $10 million theoretically, and by the way, to the powers that be that are genuinely shadow banning this channel and have shadow banned yours truly in other places, I still stand by my offer, $20 million or best offer, to renounce my citizenship and leave because y'all don't like me anymore. I will really pop smoke and leave. I'm dead serious. Y'all don't like me anyway, so bye-bye. But all jokes aside, that was not a joke, that was a serious offer. But all jokes aside, previously, I have seen parts of Pakistan that are very, very nice. So if you go to Mexico, for example, Mexico City is like a first world country in most parts of Mexico City. It's got everything. There's a lot of American expats who are living in Mexico City because it's got all the nice stuff that America has for a fraction of the price. Okay, that's very different than going to Tijuana, and that's very, very different than going to parts of Chihuahua. Okay. So here in Indonesia, I live in an area of Jakarta that's really nice, like a first world country. I got Starbucks if I want to go that. I'm not going to go to Starbucks, but my point is that pretty much everything in America that I could get over in America, I got here.
Yeah, that's the case for Malaysia, and I made that clear, right? Malaysia and Indonesia are great countries.
Hold on. Malaysia and Turkey are more developed than Indonesia. What I'm saying is, even in a quote unquote undeveloped country like Indonesia or Pakistan, you can find first world spots that have a lot of expats in here. I go shopping all the time in the local mall here, and there's all kinds of old white dudes have made the same sort of decision that I made.
Oh yeah, I've been to Pakistan, and I've seen those areas and stuff, and that's fine and great. That's great for even an extended stay, But someone who enjoys being in the United States, enjoying everything that it has to offer. I'm not going to get specifics because there's just many things that Western countries have to offer that a country like India or Pakistan or Indonesia just can't offer. But then there's countries like Turkey as well. Turkey has great options. Yeah, Turkey, very developed country. Malaysia is very developed, etc. So that's what I'm thinking. Like the lifestyle change is huge, right? So you have to have an apples-to-apple change.
This is where it gets into a really important point for people who are pondering over this decision. I am not advocating the expat life for everyone. I was already out the door. I come from a family of traveling people. Okay, I moved around a lot as a kid. I'm from Texas. I love Texas. I'm native Texan, but I like traveling around the world and seeing stuff and doing stuff and having wild adventures too. So I'm already very different than most people. Okay. For every story of a person who has made Hijrah or just even not being Muslim. I mean, I was traveling around and looking at it, moving to Indonesia before I became Muslim. Part of the reason I was turned on to Islam is because I was in Indonesia for so long, off and on. It is not for everybody.
No, I agree.
If you are not an adventurous type, if you don't have I have a background in military, long haul truck driver, family who are already expats overseas, traveling around a lot myself. I'm all about the passport bro life. In a way, I think if you're a young man with nothing to lose, it's a good idea, and you got a sense of adventure, and you're willing to be flexible, and like what the hell ever. This is a great opportunity for you. Anywhere here in the Muslim parts of Southeast Asia, you can really make yourself, as long as you got a halal way to make income abroad, or you've already got up some significant savings, or you're like me with a pension. The other end of the spectrum is old creepy people. Creepy old guys that are in their 60s and want to marry a 22-year-old. You can do that too here. So those two ends of the spectrum, that's where the expat life abroad in quote unquote wild parts of the Muslim world makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But if you're in the middle, if you're a middle-aged person, you got a wife and 3 kids and a dog and a house and a mortgage, this might not be for you, bro. It really might not.
And I don't think even as a single man in Dubai, I don't know if you ever have had friends in Dubai telling you, "Oh, how great it is in Dubai." It might be great for you to start out your business and stuff like that, but if you're trying to set up a family, find someone to marry, that the female population in Dubai is like 25 to 30%. Really small population of women. It's a giant meat factory over there,
Half of those women are prostitutes too.
Yeah, and the women you want to meet, they're like the gold diggers. They want stuff out of you.
So it's like the Yellowknife of the Middle East.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're going to get shanghaied in Dubai. You're going to get Dubai'd at least once.
Big trouble in Little Dubai.
In short, a lot of I guess Muslim YouTube personalities, will say, Hijrah, Muslims need to make Hijrah to the Middle East and and the Muslim world. But I think both me, Harry, and Sim are in agreement that it's definitely not for everybody. Some people can pull it off. Some people are used to that kind of lifestyle. But it's just simply not financially feasible, emotionally feasible, physically feasible. Some people can do it, but I mean, they don't have the infrastructure to take in en masse, hundreds of thousands of Muslims. And the other thing is that, depending on the country, I mean, there's some exceptions. I mean, Malaysia is an exception, but even some of these countries are being, clamping down on any type of speech against Zionism. You obviously, in some countries, you don't you have to really watch what you say. That's another thing. There's a good friend of mine who's also a convert and said that the things that you can and can't talk about in the West compared to the Muslim world are completely inverted. The three categories of people that people insult all the time in the West, you can't insult over there, and then vice versa. So I'm not going to name I'm not going to name those 6 categories of people, but I guess you can venture what it is. But it's a huge lifestyle change, and like Sim said, Muslims who've been in the West for generations, it's gonna be very difficult for them to
Harry,
live there.
Harry, let me just interject for a second, just to give you an idea. I lived in, or not lived, but I stayed in defense in Pakistan. It's like a really posh area. Like it's where the cream of the crop live. So I stayed there for 2 weeks. Day 3, I was losing my mind. It's when you want to go out, people tell you hey, don't take your regular phone. Take an old phone with you. You can't walk around with a relatively new phone because you'll get jacked. If you do want to go out, make sure you have an armed security guard with you. It's bananas. How are you supposed to live like that?
Yeah,
I'm
we're
supposed
not.
to
Nobody's
have
advocating for Pakistan here.
No, because
it's completely different than that.
It's the reason why, Harry, is because the most viable options for people to go back to their country is their native country where they're from, where they speak the language and will be able to adjust easily. That's why I keep going back to Pakistan. But for sure, we're all in agreement. Malaysia, Turkey, Morocco, developed places are the most ideal option.
Now, well, let me speak specifically for the Indo-Pak people, because most y'all Indo-Pak folks, I almost used the word Pakis, and I'm like, I can't use that.
Yeah, we can say that in America, but not there.
We can say it in America, but not in the UK. Okay, yeah. So I don't want the UK people going how do you, first he says the N word by saying ninja, now he's calling us Pakis. Oh, no. Okay, but all right. So in America and the UK and America are different than other parts of mainland Europe. Mainland Europe are ethno-states at heart. Even Germany, though it says it's not an ethno-state, that's an ethno-state. Germany, my uncle Bob, who lived in Germany for 20 years, he came back and he's like, yeah, Harry, you know what? Germany, it was meant for the Germans. I was like, yeah, I think you're right, Uncle Bob. That is a very different place than the UK that was literally a multicultural, multilingual, multi-religious, multi-ethnic thing in its inception. Hence the word United Kingdom, because it was, Scotland, the UK, Wales, they put together, right? Okay. And the United States, Thomas Jefferson and GW, they had their racism of the day and all that. But even then in their writings, they're like, anybody can really come here, and they, so long as they follow the Constitution and they're good noodles, that's cool. So I have never been a white nationalist, and I have never had a problem with Pakistani folks, Indo-Pak folks like yourself coming to the United States. and assimilating and living a good life.
Thank God.
I don't expect. I don't really care about that. I think the problem is now that we've got too many people coming in all at once, and it's kind of we have like some infrastructure problems where there's not enough housing. Like Rob up in Canada, he'll tell you about that too. They got it worse than we do. Mostly with Hindus coming in large numbers.
Yeah.
It's not because Hindus are bad. It's not because Pakistani Muslims are bad. It's because there's too many people coming in at once for the amount of infrastructure and housing that's available, and it's just like, oh my God, forget about the cultural assimilation issues. Canada and the United States are actually pretty good, and even the UK is pretty good too at some point. I can't tell you how many Pakistani people from the UK I talked to who are like, yeah, I'm an Englishman. The fact that I'm Pakistani and brown doesn't matter. I'm just an Englishman with a tan. And they're right. Like they've lived in the UK. They were part of the Commonwealth. Their grandpas fought in World War II, just like my grandpa and the white people's grandpa from Liverpool. So like, they're Englishmen. They're part of the Commonwealth. They served the Queen. They were part of that whole shindig. So we're not. I don't think that the Indo-Pac situation for people in the UK and the US is very different than people in Germany, France, etc. The UK is gonna if they could just have some dialogue between those two communities, they could solve that problem. Really, that's a solvable problem. I don't know about Germany. I don't think that's a solvable problem. France, I've got low expectations. I'm not so optimistic.
Well, it's tough to have a solvable solution when all of your interlocutors, all the people who are mainstream that you talk to, all just their main focus is that they hate Islam and they hate Muslims, and you're not going to get anywhere with them, unfortunately. So there's some there are reasonable people that you don't see on social media, and I think this is a problem with basing all of our opinions on what we see on social media. There's a lot of people who are on the fence, who are neutral, who maybe don't care, who maybe feel more positively, or maybe slightly negative towards Islam and Muslims. These people, with time and with dialogue and with good actions, you can change. Inshallah, you can change the hearts and minds of the people. But when you have, the worst of like the anti-Islam right as the only other voice that you're talking to, you could, argue with them night and day. It's just like talking to a brick wall. But this raises like another interesting discussion too, because and you mentioned the United States and the UK where there's already Muslim population that's been there for a while. They've done many of them have done at least some great work in the field of dawah. Like in the United Kingdom, there's 800,000 white Muslims living there. That takes some incredible, at least some type of effort, through dawah booths, through open houses. So there's a lot of charitable work that the people on the ground do that you don't really get the recognition because it doesn't get the likes and the clicks. But this brings up another important topic of converts. Because a lot of converts, they'll get the advice right away that that everyone who converts to Islam should make Hijrah, and that's seen as a more extreme position. But you have some people who actually take that seriously. Now, some converts, they've done quite well. They've made Hijrah to the Muslim world. Maybe they spent a couple years there, made their money, and came back. But there's also been converts you converted in the early 2000s and the 1990s, and they just couldn't hack it. And their experience was pretty shaky, to the point that they've been some of them actually just been traumatized by the way that they get treated. So you already, as a convert, your whole family, your whole community, you have hundreds of people that you have like these lifelong connections with. It's important that you maintain a good relationship with them. You're going to be asked about that on the day of judgment, because once you convert to Islam, you are ambassador of that faith. And I can understand Harry's point about young male converts, who want to make a buck, who want to stack their resume, and some of them are able to do that. But not everybody is in that situation. Some converts aren't in the situations where they can, quit their job and move to another department in the same city, let alone like packing up and leaving.
For sure.
So it's on paper it sounds like a great idea. Like a lot of these people who advocate for this, they have these like dreams of like one country Khalifa, that with one Muslim ruler ruling over all, just get rid of all these national borders and just have one Islamic state. But I mean, that is just pie in the sky thinking. I mean, like Sim said, with when it comes to India and Pakistan, they have so many structural problems. How are they going to deal with all these different types of people from all countries of the world coming in? It's so pie in the sky. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Harry. If you wanted to add anything to that.
I think that it would be wonderful if we could all live in Khalifa. The number one problem I have in explaining to my non-Muslim friends about return to Khalifa is they hear that and they go, "Oh, you want to return to me, Khalifa? Of course you do." Oh, and I'm like, "No, I didn't mean that kind of Khalifa, guys." But I forget who said it. Somebody wisely said, and I've heard a couple other people say this too. The return to Khalifa is going to happen when the level of iman is returned amongst the people, and it will happen naturally. We won't have to stage revolutions or kill unalive people or grape anybody. We won't have to join the Taliban. It'll happen periodically, piece by piece. It'll probably happen in local places. I think Indonesia could be a Khalifa one day, and before the government panics and raids my apartment here, I am not advocating a violent takeover or a Taliban style Sharia party or anything like that. I'm saying that as Indonesians become naturally more traditional, conservative, good Muslims, and they have been over the last 10, 20 years, there has been an awakening away from secularism and not. 10 years ago, there weren't a whole lot of women in Jakarta wearing hijab, and now many do. That's a natural, organic process to be dealt with piece by piece, not violent, not aggressive. And, if not everybody wants to be Muslim in your Khalifa and they just want to, keep drinking beer, or they're Christian or Buddhist or whatever here, the same legal protections that exist for them now under Pancasila, Indonesia's constitution, should still be extended to them. So, people misunderstand what Khalifa is. They think that they can just establish this, aggressively overnight, and it's like you all are missing the point. But I will make this one thing about young guys coming over here. Part of the reason young Muslim reverts, men in particular, should consider making hijrah to a place like Southeast Asia, Indonesia, Malaysia in particular, is because this is a way that you can find a good Muslim wife who will, she's going to be mostly traditional. There is some feminist influence over here, but she's going to be mostly traditional. And, she's going to have patience with you when you make a mistake, because you will as a new Muslim. Now, it's just going to happen. So if you're a sincere Muslim, you say, I'm a new Muslim, I want to learn, I want to get married, have traditional family, be a good Muslim, all that. An Indonesian or Malaysian woman will be there to support you and help you in that process. A Saudi woman, maybe not so much unless you're conservative Salafi revert and she's conservative Salafi. But I think you get what I'm saying. It's for a passport bro type of Muslim revert like me, it makes sense to go. It makes sense to go. Because I'm not saying that I can't find a Muslim girl in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. There's some really great Muslim communities in Dallas-Fort Worth. But, a lot of the girls after 3 or 4 generations, they only want to hang around other people that are in their group. They're going to ask for very high mahars. They've been influenced by feminism way more than girls here in Jakarta. Uh, I'm not saying you can't find a good Muslimah in the Dallas-Fort Worth area to marry as a young revert man, but it's a bit of a challenge.
It's not easy, and one of the problems here is as well is for these countries like Dubai and Qatar, etc., where there's no pathway to citizenship. Like you're always at this mercy of like, wait, as long as I have a work visa, I'm okay, I'm cool with you guys. And one time in my later years, well, who knows if I have that capability to keep earning, maybe I'm no longer welcome in your country and I have to go back. And and that in itself is like, wait, I gave your country the best years of my life, and you want me to go back and start clean, fresh back in the United States or whichever European country I'm from? It's a difficult proposition to tell someone to make that you give your best years of your life to this so and so Middle Eastern country, where they don't give you any pathway to citizenship.
Right.
And then you kind of left holding the bag,
Indonesia has a moderate path to citizenship. Real quick, sorry, Rob. Real quick, Indonesia does have a moderate path to citizenship in that if you're here long enough and you got businesses and you speak the languages, if you've been here for 10, 20 years, you could renounce your citizenship and accept Indonesian citizenship. I know a couple people have done that. It's a bit tricky, and as time goes on and they liberalize a little bit, they might be more accepting. But basically, the way to stay in Indonesia long term are either you have a business or you get married. And I chose the marriage route. That's the slam dunk one. But you're right, Dubai doesn't have that. And Arab women are, white dudes and Arab women I don't want to say they don't mix, but it's hard to find an Arab family that'll accept a white revert marrying their precious, beautiful Arab daughter.
I don't think they're that way with every ethnicity. Unfortunately,
I'm taking it very personally. I just don't see it. I don't.
It's just they're very tribal in nature. They're that way with just each other as well. So
even in Palestine, Palestine,
even in Palestine, they won't marry outside their village. That's how picky they are. So that's something that's just a characteristic. Well, to each their own. Who am I to tell you how? It's just your what the problem. The funny thing is, what I tell people is like, the restrictions you place on yourself in trying to find a spouse or whatever in order to find happiness, and you make those conditions to your own happiness, and then you complain about not being able to find a spouse and stuff due to your own restrictions that you've made and placed on yourself. You're complaining to God about it, like, oh, I can't find a wife. Well, you're the one who made the restriction that you won't go outside your town or your village to marry someone else from another city, and then you get caught in a bad marriage with some douchebag because he's from your same village, he's familiar with you, and it's so I can't stress how many people I've seen just end up in both on men and women, who've been stuck on the short end of the stick because they placed these stupid rules on themselves where, nope, this is the criteria he or she has to meet before I marry them, and then I'll deal with that.
I've seen the opposite happen though, Sim. I mean, like there's situations, and this gets into a greater discussion about kafah, but I've seen horror stories of people marrying from another country, and the situation, just the fact that you're in a different geographic location than your family. That can just pose a whole lot of problems that people sometimes, you're putting all of your eggs in one basket. And I can understand the wisdom behind kafah after being, Muslim for 20 years. I mean, I'm not saying that, intercultural marriage is for everybody. I'm not saying that intercultural marriage is for everybody. Everybody's different. But, there are risks and benefits associated with both. I'll give you one anecdote. There's a sister who was from Somalia, Mogadishu, and she worked in Saudi. Sorry, my cat is walking by me. Married a gentleman from Pakistan there. They were both working in Saudi, and he brought her back to Pakistan. Nice guy. she lived in Islamabad with him and his family. Family didn't treat her very well, right? They had 3 kids together, and then 5 years, it's 6, 7, 8 years after they met, he dies, and the family just made her into a slave. You're working for us now. You're never going to be able to leave the place. They abusive to her, and she met someone in a Somali Muslim by chance on the streets in Islamabad, and she's like told him the whole story, like, get me out of here. I'm stuck, completely stuck, and made her way through like this underground railroad, for Somalis in Pakistan, and ended up having to take a one-way ticket back to Mogadishu. Never saw her kids again. So you have stories like that. So I'm not saying that every story is going to end up that way, but there are risks and benefits associated with both. So that's just my take on it.
Yeah, Harry, you got anything to chime in with?
No, I mean, I was just answering somebody here in the comments section. Stepmommy made a really good point. American women don't like hairy types.
I think they do. I don't think that's true. No, I don't think that's true, Harry. I think there's a lot of traditional. There's a lot of traditional women. They just the thing is, when you're on social media, you hear the craziest voices the loudest, and I think there's a lot of women in America and UK, in the West in general, who are very traditional minded, who understand what a man needs, and who know how to take care of men and have that level of traditionality. Yes, there are women who are feminists. Yes,
but they're not Muslims.
No, they are Muslims.
They're not Muslims.
There are Muslims.
No, they're not. Most of the women that would be interested in me are like. It's not that I'm not a good guy for them to marry.
Yeah.
But if you're a traditional Catholic girl, and I'm a conservative, and I'm a revert to Islam, we have a lot in common, except for you're not going to get to baptize your babies.
Here's my experience has been a bit different. That's not going to work
for a lot of people.
Okay. So I think there are traditional-minded women, but I don't think they sometimes, with certain guys, they want the traditional-minded girl, but she also has to look a certain way too. She has to fit that kind of that Instagram hijabi type, that model type image that they have in their mind. I'm not saying you. I'm just saying a lot of Muslim men are saying, well, she has to look a certain way and she has to, meet these other visual criteria in terms of her beauty, but also have all these traditional things where she'll let me marry multiple women and stuff like that. And it's just, dude, like, you can't have everything, okay?
And that's why I moved over here, because here I can have everything. So
there you go.
Would I not leave? And when I leave,
and I'm not pooping on your decision. I think whatever makes you happy, right?
Well, it's like I came back from Iraq and the government said I'm a potential terrorist. I've never forgotten that, and then I've had family and friends, because of my outspoken criticism of our support for Israel and this war over the years, threaten me, unfriend me, block me. And then with liberal people, they all unfriended and blocked me because I voted for our Lord and Savior Trumpalicious. I hope nobody jumps on me for using that as a joke. So I just kind of go like, where would I go?
Yeah.
Oddly enough, I do find a lot of friendship with people in Gen Z. And I it's not that I don't have friends. Even if I renounce my citizenship, I would still want to come back on occasion and get a visa, apply for a visa, or I'd like fly my friends and meet them out in Canada or whatever, or meet them in Mexico. I still love America and the people here. It's just like, for me, I'm just kind of like, I'm tired of constantly being labeled a terrorist. When I left the church group I was in, my mother falsely accused me of wanting to take a machine gun and shoot up the place. Actually, she's that much of a narcissist. So for me, like, I feel largely disenfranchised. I'm not going to.
You're loved by us, and I don't think. Here's one of the things that, at least when a man such as yourself, when I see you, I don't see someone who's so worried about what people like the government or what have you. I'm sure, yes, of course, your mom, is your mom. Obviously that's going to hold weight. But in general, like, who cares who cares what they think of whether you're a terrorist or not? You do your thing.
Well, it's like, but I don't really want to be around people who don't like me all the time. I do find plenty of people in the United States that like me, but it's like when it comes to like finding a girl to get married, settling down, I could do it in DFW. I could probably pull it off.
It's a great place. I was just there this whole weekend, this past weekend.
It's wonderful. It's super awesome. DFW is amazing.
It blew my mind. It's a new city. It's polished. It's clean. I couldn't find a cigarette butt in the corner. So it's that clean. It's awesome. Oh my God. I was blown away. And the infrastructure and everything. For a state that doesn't have any state income tax, you're thinking you're thinking that, there's going to be like disruption of, there's going to be broken roads and potholes and, broken infrastructure. Everything's taken care of. I'm like, wow, they have like utilities for everything. There's like vehicle inspection points at gas stations instead of having to go to some facility with long lines. You just pull up to. I'm like, wow, that's awesome. And
Illinois is a dystopian hellhole. Yes.
Oh my God! After I came from the UK a few years ago, I visited there. I'm like, oh, Chicago's amazing. Thank God, this is the best, right? I've been to Vancouver and other cities but those are like unattainable. That's for like the ultra rich, right? Like Dubai and Vancouver and stuff. But I'm like, oh, okay, we have it pretty good here. But then now after going to Dallas, I'm like, ooh, these guys are doing it better. And just for middle class America, like, or upper middle class America, where you can actually have a decent home and schools, the whole environment is and plenty of Muslims all around you. Like, this is actually a pretty good option.
It's not a bad option if if you want to make internal Hijrah without leaving the United States. Texas has some really great cities where Muslims are welcome. The problem is a lot of those communities do get super liberal.
Yeah.
So that is why I say, like, trying to marry a Muslim girl from that community, she might even like you, and she might really like me a lot. And then I'm like, so, Aisha, we're going to get married. And what do you think about... Harry, you don't understand. That's from 1400 years ago. And I'm like, but that's Grand Suna, sweetheart. It's a little bit tricky.
Sorry to interject here, Harry, but I think one factor that I kind of, I think we're kind of not talking about here is that, most women who come from more like traditional families, they're more likely to have, their families be heavily involved with, with the marriage in the first place and go through the traditional route of founding someone, either within their extended family or like, within, the social networks that they already know. So they already have these kind of like networks in place where it's more difficult for outsiders, to have a chance. So I think, part of that is, one factor that we're not looking at is that, they've already got this kind of system set up already. And, so that's why a lot of them are more likely to get taken. So I'm not saying that we get leftovers, but, it's just more difficult to find, traditional women.
Here's the thing as well.
It's not leftovers. It's women that are like, I want $30,000 from my maher and a G-Wagon and blah, blah.
Okay, Harry, you're coming from a different perspective, but a lot of guys as well that I've spoken to, they add a lot of conditions as well. Like, oh, you can't be divorced.
That's true.
You can't have a kid. That I don't want to look after your kid from someone else's marriage and stuff like that. And guys do the same crap back at women too. So there's I've just been kind of studying this whole thing that's just been happening over the past few years about how people are finding marriage and how relationships are breaking up a lot, and there's just a lot of blame to go around. And I think if you just come in with some level of sincerity, some level of humility towards a relationship, you realize like, hey, I'm not perfect. I'm not going to find the perfect person, but we're both invested in making each other better. I'm so confident in that good people can find good people. like if you put it out there, but if you're going to be like high and mighty, not you specifically here, but I'm talking about just guys in general, like
right,
and you feel like, oh, you take a little dose of the red pill and you're like, I'm not going to be the caretaker of someone else's mistakes and stuff like that, like then you know what, guess what, have at it, Hoss. Let's see how far you go.
I do tell this to men in the comment section all the time, and I tell this to ladies in the comment section, both the red pill and the feminazis. I tell them both. It's like, look, this is why polygamy is a thing. It's actually not to have like a Bunny Ranch style Playboy Mansion kind of harem. Yeah. It's actually supposed to be a mercy to, the ladies who are divorcees and single mamas out there, And that makes perfect sense. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, Aisha was the only young virgin that he had. The rest of his wives were all widows and divorcees or tribal marriages designed to, like, bring tribes together.
Yeah.
So he said that's the sunnah. That's actually the sunnah. The problem is, finding women that'll go along with that, and then two, the legal structure that's not really in your favor in the event of a divorce.
Again, whether it's polygamous or not, if two people...
Polygamous or not,
two people coming into the relationship with humility, trying to realize like, hey, we're going to try to make this work as best as we possibly can. We both are grounded in the tradition, and we're coming. We're trying to approach this with the best of intentions, and they work towards that. I think it'll work. I just can't imagine people with that frame of reference still falling apart unless they become different people after marriage.
Yeah, and it's somebody made a good comment, which is the best way to achieve marriage results: know your market value and proceed from there. I am not a rich man by American standards, but because I have all the good government benefits as of having a good government pension, there's a lot of advantages to being married to me, even if I don't make six figures.
Oh, I don't think that in itself is the only delimiter or the only marker. I think knowing your market value means like being honest with yourself and knowing like, hey, like this is who I am. Like I know that it's very unlikely for me to find a Instagram hijabi model type with traditional values.
I don't want one
like no, I'm just saying like you gotta be framing yourself right. Like there was here, you know who Baba Ali is. I went with him to.
I've heard of this person.
He's a famous YouTuber. He does a lot of marriage matchmaking type of services, and I went with him once with him to a matchmaking service where we're helping people or couples meet each other and get married. And so what happens is this one girl who's extremely attractive in the crowd, she's just getting all the the tallest, most handsome looking men surrounding her, and then I'm helping this guy out who's just not finding anyone to talk to, right? And I'm like, dude, who do you want to talk to? He's like, because we're helping people get introduced to each other, and he's like, he points to that girl. I'm like, all right, you're like here, and she's like she's in the next level category. Like, are you filthy rich? What is it that you have going on for you? See, this is what I'm talking about. Like, you have to know your value and understand like, hey, this is the best. The effort that I make towards someone should match who I am. Sometimes people get, oftentimes I see this problem with brothers. They find a super attractive girl who is interested in them, right? And then they think that that's their value. They won't look for any other girl who's not pretty. And they think that she has to hit that 8 or 9 mark in beauty to
that's not me at all. I don't think like that at all.
No, I'm not talking about you here, but I'm talking about just guys in general, like this idea of value and stuff. I know we were way off the subject now, but being humble and being able to understand like where you are, what social status you have, what income you have, what your looks are. These are things only you can answer. I'm not going to tell you like, hey, you you don't look good. You're 6 on the best day. That's just a horrible thing to say for me to tell you. You have to be honest with yourself and say, hey, this is who I am. This is what the gifts I've been blessed with I can bring to a marriage, and hopefully I can get someone that's in that same vicinity.
I think religiosity is also a huge role. So that's one factor. That's not just like how religious you are, like your level of practice, but sometimes like what school of thought you follow. I mean, like you want to make sure that those match. I mean, you have people who are flexible. As long as you're a practicing Muslim, alhamdulillah, that's fine. Other people, like I kind of cringe whenever I hear, that people say, deen should be the only factor. I mean, it's almost like you're implying that only religious people get married. I mean, like there's some people who are struggling in their deen, and like you want someone that you want that's on the same level as you, that you can build yourself up together.
Absolutely.
So I think that's a very important aspect of being compatible with somebody.
The brothers in the comments who, I'm not talking about a literal Instagram model. I'm talking about the look. The hijabi who wears like the decked out clothes. I'm not talking about the literal model. Try to work with me here. Let's use a little bit of reason. We're not talking about the literal model. We're talking about that look that sometimes guys are attracted to. Sorry. Go ahead, Rob.
What I'd say is if she's in a burqa, she can totally be an Instagram model, but for me and me alone.
Exactly. Guys, do you have anything else to add, or should we wrap it up?
What I don't know. Did you want to talk about? Did you watch my previous? Oh, my cell phone died. Did you watch my previous video on like converts and employment? Harry or Sim was talking about like I think Oso made a comment on Asim Al Hakim posted a video of him or a photo of him with like Calgary policemen. Did you hear about that, Sim?
No. Yeah, he had a good time apparently. Had a good time.
So he posted, this, like here, taking a photo. He was smiling with like some Muslim policeman from like Calgary or whatever. And then somebody, I don't know, he's well known in like the UK. I'm not going to name names, but he basically said they're not your brothers. Just like, damn, that's pretty extreme. I mean, it's one thing to say that it's haram to like work for, but his reasoning was that like you're working basically for an oppressive government that's killing our brothers and sisters. I don't know how policemen in Canada are doing this, but even if that's true, I don't think that automatically makes you a kafir. No. And on top of, I mean, it was just completely off the wall, very extreme stuff. And this guy, I'm not going to name names, works for Oxford University. So I mean, I was basically saying, putting all that aside, it's just simply unfeasible to ask people, okay, what if that person was a convert? What do you want everyone who like works in law enforcement, and firemen, and postmen to quit their jobs? I mean, there's no Muslim community that has like human resources to like allocate different careers to people and pay them similar wages for like what you believe is a more halal job. So I don't know, like.
Oh, you cut yourself off.
Oh no.
Oh no, you're okay now. You're okay
now.
Okay, you're back.
Did you hear what I said?
Your last part, we missed it.
Did anyone have it? Did you see that, Harry or Sim? Did you see that post?
I didn't see it. Harry,
no, I didn't see that post either. No.
Yeah. So, well, I guess we'll have to get into detail with that.
Okay.
Then but yeah, I'll give myself a plug. Please subscribe to Islam for Europeans. Or the YouTube channel dedicated to the healing their broken relationship between Muslims and Westerners. I'm Robert. You can meet me at Robert of Canada on X. And yeah, that's pretty much about it for
Perfect.
me. Harry, did you want to do a plug?
Yeah, I'd like once again plug my channel on X at Mr. Hurry 198. Please subscribe. Please follow me there. Send me a message. Tell me what's up. Tell me your life story. Ask me for du'as. Whatever you want to do. I'm gonna get a donation button at some point. I hope people really think things through rather than making rash decisions. Because I will say one thing in conclusion, which is that before I became Muslim, I tried to leave because I was just I didn't want to deal with America. I was just kind of like, this was my way of dealing with PTSD. I didn't want to look at people. I didn't want to talk to people anymore. I wanted to leave. And I visited a lot of different countries, tried to hang out there. And it didn't work. You know, so some of you young guns that have never left the country or never done this before or don't have a passport, and you just turned 19, you got kicked out of your mama's house, and you want to make Hijrah to Morocco, it might not be a good idea for you. You gotta really think this through here and get some consultation. Really explore your options
and have an exit plan. That's one thing I forgot to add.
Have an exit plan.
Yeah, because a lot of people, they make Hijrah and they think, they don't think about moving back, but sometimes you have to. Sometimes your visa expires and, you're back in, the United States or Canada, and all the context and all the, all the potential jobs you had back in that country is now gone, and you got to start from scratch. So have a viable exit strategy in that particular case.
Awesome.
So, makes sense if you're a remote worker, especially. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. Make sure you like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Throw a comment in the comment section below with your thoughts related to the show. Should we, as Muslims, go back home? Should we start considering it? Thumbs up, thumbs down? What do you think? All right. We'll see you all next time. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam. All right.
I want
it was hard after getting
I want the revolution
and then
crushed.
having